Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
And welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. And today I'm joined by somebody that I've been lucky enough and graciously enough been able to follow on the Twitterverse. You may know her as Kelli Butler, also known as the Opera Geek, and she has co-written a best-selling DM's Guild Bard subclass with Hannah Rose called College of the Opera, which you should definitely go check out if you are interested in playing a Bard subclass such as that. Welcome to the podcast, Kelli.
Why, hello. Thank you for having me.
It's absolutely a pleasure. I have to say, and we were talking a little bit before we got started, that there's so many great and wonderful people in like the tabletop Twitter community, and you are one of those people that I love to just follow and see not only like the positive like posts that you make, but the stuff where it's just goodness that comes from you.
Thanks. I'm sure there are some people in the world that would possibly disagree with you, but I try to put my best my best face forward on the Twitters.
I definitely I know that there's a number of people in that community where I see certain posts and I'm like, man, you are doing the work for the good of the community by what you have to bring out sometimes.
Yeah, I get sorry. I get a little cantankerous sometimes. And I try not to, but I'm a firm believer in that if you have a platform, you should use that platform to bring awareness to things and try to spread a little joy if you can.
Absolutely. We finally reconnected, and yeah. I have to say thank you. Yeah, I'm saying thank you too many times. I'll probably edit out my thank yous, but it's just for me looking in and having like all these wonderful people. It's just wonderful to get some people to come and talk to me about some of their fandoms that they love, and not only tabletop role playing, which we will get to closer to the end, but one of the big fandoms that you're into is video games.
Yes.
Well, first, my first question is how did you get into video games? Like, what was your first like memory of getting into video games?
So it's a little weird because when I was growing up in a military family. My dad was a master sergeant. Well, obviously not originally a master sergeant. He worked his way up. But there wasn't a ton of money to go around for things like video games. So a lot of times what I would do is I would find people who had them, or whatever else. My brother's friends usually. I was not replete with friends, but my brother was. And also, where we lived in Germany, the youth center had a couple video game systems. And I remember going in one day and sitting down, and they had Simon's Quest, Castlevania. And I just sat there and played that and played that and played that. My dad bought me the original gray brick Game Boy. I still have it. It's in my living room. It's missing a screen. It still runs. I would just sit there and play for hours because, kind of like books, video games have this ability to take you out of yourself. Either have a story or a mechanic or something that just kind of helps you forget your everyday life. So the way it worked is that, I would play my brother's my brother's friends' video game systems when they came over, whether it be Genesis or whatever else. When I could get my hands on the one at the youth centers, I would play that. But I didn't actually own my own game system until, I want to say, either late middle school or early high school. It was the first time I owned my own console. And it was one of those, we'll get you this, but you have to keep your grades up. And you have to pay for half of it. And buying the games is your responsibility. unless it's Christmas or whatever.
Right.
So I did, and it was a PlayStation. It was my very first game console. So I think it had to have been high school. It had to have been high school because I remember the first game that I bought. Oh my God, this is actually going to finally give away my age a little bit. Oh God. Which I try to keep very hidden. Because I remember the first game I got on my PlayStation was Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
And I had played Final Fantasy VI, not 3. Thank you very much, Dan Dillon. Final Fantasy VI, which is technically labeled as 3 in the US.
Yep.
On a friend's Super Nintendo, which then he ended up, he had a spare, so I ended up with a second, like with his second Super Nintendo after I had the PlayStation, so then I could play Final Fantasy VI all I wanted. And 6 is still my favorite Final Fantasy. 7 kind of holds a place in my heart because it was the first console game I owned. And the first console I owned. So, and I mean, I spent hours and hours, and to give you an idea about how little I knew what to do at that point, I didn't know you needed a memory card.
Mm-hmm.
So the first night I got it, I was super excited. I opened it up, and I started playing for hours and hours.
Oh, no.
And then I realized I didn't have a way to save it. So I had to go out the next day with my mom and I'd get a memory card and then start again from scratch. But it was good because I got to fix some of the mistakes I made first time around.
Well, there you go. And I mean, honestly, like the PlayStation was one of those first consoles that even had a memory card.
I just started, I got the hankering, I guess, last month to play Symphony of the Night again. We have PlayStation 2 Slim still. We have a whole retro gaming corner in our house that has back to, I think, Genesis. But I realized I didn't have a memory card, and thank goodness I managed to find one online and get it so that I could play Symphony of the Night. Of course, I could have done the thing where I just didn't stop and played the whole game at once, but which is possible. My husband pointed out if you really try, you can beat Symphony of the Night in like 8 to 10 hours if you just sit down and do it. But kind of takes some of the fun out of it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and you need that break, like
every once in a while you should get up to go to the bathroom. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Or get some water or eat something, stretch your legs.
Yeah, and our the little gaming corner we have, it's got a beanbag in front of it. So you just lean on the beanbag and the cat will get on the beanbag and like sit on top of my head when I'm leaning on it. And the dog will sit and stare at the TV screen. And it's kind of nice because they came out with all these, they ported Symphony of the Night and all these other games to some of the newer systems.
Right.
But there's something nice about hearing that CD whirring in the console. And we even have an old style TV, like with the huge back end and everything else. We kept one so that the games would look okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Like when we moved into this apartment about a year and a half ago, I was getting ready to unpack. The movers had left, and we were exhausted, obviously. And then I hear from the other room the TV turn on, and I hear ActRaiser coming out of the TV, and I'm like, "Are you playing ActRaiser in the middle of?" He was like, "Well, it was there, and we were setting up." I was like, "That was not the first thing you were supposed to set up." But it's a little thing. So yeah, video games kind of functioned. For me, kind of in the same way books did, which was to give me an escape, because I didn't come to performing until a little bit later. When I was about 14, 15, is when I started performing in community theater. And before that, I was really just, I mean, I still was, but I was just, you know, the kind of the nerdy outcast kid that nobody really wanted to eat lunch with.
Yeah, I've been there.
And then, so I would just sit and read books and eat my lunch, and I was younger than everybody else because I had been skipped over grades, and which just added to the social issues. So books and video games existed as a way for me to kind of forget all the other stuff, you know, the lack of friends, the bullying, all that kind of stuff. It was easy to get yourself lost in a good story or in a good game, you know, and I tend to still favor RPGs when I play games. I love games with a story. There's very, very few like shooter games I play or games that don't have any kind of story to them.
I'm nodding along with everything because it sounds almost like parallel for me, because I was skipped a grade, so I was always the youngest.
Yeah.
I graduated high school when I was like 17.
I had just turned 17 2 weeks before I graduated high school.
So yeah, and it's the same thing. Like I grew up with primarily books on the shelves and video games in my house, and like Final Fantasy IV for me, which is 2 in the United States, is like that's my go-to game. Like that's the game that I will fall on my sword for and love till the day I die, because that was my game. But shockingly, at some point, like I never played 6.
Oh, you've got to play 6. Oh, and you know, my bridesmaids walked down the aisle to Rydia's theme.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, my husband's favorite is 4, and Rydia's his girl. So.
Oh man.
Yeah. My wedding was almost all symphonic video game music. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, except for the bridal march. I did have the like full choral version of the bridal march just because I felt like it. But yeah, the Final Fantasy main theme was what was our recessional. We had Zelda and everything playing at the reception. But yeah, Rydia's theme was our bridesmaids procession, which was
so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the music. So, you know, I know later Final Fantasies, especially, there's a lot of opinions about them, you know. But the one thing I've never found fault with in any Final Fantasy is the music. The music is brilliant. Always been brilliant.
It has. It's one of my favorite things. It's why, like, I have so many CDs of Final Fantasy music, and why, like, I keep hoping that one day they'll have like the tour come to Orlando with Final Fantasy.
What about you? I want them to call me to sing the opera scene from 6. I can sing it in Italian and Japanese and English. I did record it in English for Grant Ellis's Life on Mars thing. Since Matt Mercer was in the game, and Grant brought me in as this big bad NPC to kill Matt Mercer. Spoiler alert. And Matt's a huge fan of Final Fantasy VI too. Grant had me record it as the end credits, but I didn't have my good microphone then, so I have to go back and re-record it and maybe do the other languages too. But yeah, that music, man, it's amazing. The Final Fantasy music is absolutely phenomenal, and whether or not you've liked any particular installment, the music's always been great.
It has been.
I love it.
So for your first video game that you got on the PlayStation, Final Fantasy VII, did you beat it?
Oh God, yes. Years later, my husband, I guess I still had at one point my old memory card, and my husband found my save, or I was replaying it or something, and he went into hysterics, yelling about how I didn't slot my materia right. And redoing all of my materia. Yeah, he had issues with my materia placement. But at least I got one thing right. You know, you master level a few mimics, you master level a few Knights of the Round, and then you just put a rubber band on the controller, and that's how you beat Emerald Weapon. You just let it repeat itself. And that was before you could skip the cutscenes. So Knights of the Round took a good 2 minutes every single time you did it. But yeah, so my initial games on PlayStation that really made an impact on me, 7, Xenogears, which I will fight for because that game is amazing and not enough people know about it. I freaking love Xenogears. And I consistently joke that before I ever came to New York, I learned the subway system from Parasite Eve. And that might be why I still get lost in the New York subway system after being here for 20 years.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then it just kind of moved from there. And when I went to college, everything, of course, came with me. And I was playing Final Fantasy VIII in college, and then 9, which is a really good game. 9 is very similar to 4.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, after 8 really deviated in their combat style system, 9 was kind of like, hey, remember we made 4. But yeah, the video games were always a way to kind of give myself a way out and help your brain not process. And when you've got ADD and your brain is firing off a million things at once at you, on top of the social anxiety, on top of the bullying, on top of everything else, having something like a game that you could sit and focus on. The games, the books, like, still to this day, if I'm reading a book and I'm really interested in that book, you could be talking to me, I will not hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Won't hear you. Absolutely not. And there's still something I love about holding a real book, like a physical book. Although the ease of having a e-reader that I can carry, 800 to 1,000 books on is not lost on me.
Yeah, that's definitely something I know that I've been trying to get back into reading more. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, I've got this Kindle full of books, and I've got a bookshelf full of books that I order on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And now I've restarted going to the library with the kids, and they deliver books to the house if you put them on hold. Oh my God,
really?
Really?
Oh,
so I've been having books just randomly show up on my door that I've put on hold, and I'm like, well, now I've got a dilemma of I've got like probably close to 100 books that I've got on my reading list, and mm-hmm. I just need to sit down and read them.
Yeah, and yeah, I manage to find time to read little points through the day. It just, I still have trouble. This is like a huge thing from my husband, because if I don't have a book, it'll be my phone or something. When I eat, I like to read because that's what I did in school, and it becomes a habit. You just sit there and read. And like, I'm looking over at the bookshelf right now in my bedroom, and I've got these R.A. Salvatore books that are falling apart because I've owned them for so long and read them so many times, but I'm not gonna, I will read them until they literally fall apart.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's what happened to my Belgariad books, to my original Icewind Dale books, my Cleric Quintet, everything. They just finally fell apart. I couldn't like even read them because they split at the spine and just pages everywhere.
That's when you know the book has lived a good life.
It has lived a very good life, and some of them, I lent some of my books to people, and while I might not have gotten those books back, I know that it started them on a journey where they would read the author's work, and mm-hmm. that means something.
It does. It's something where I think that's one of the highest things that somebody can do is recommend a book series, mm-hmm. and then not only like recommend, but then after that person's read it and they're in, like, they get into that series with you, and you're like, oh, like now it's like that shared thing. It's just it's one of the greatest feelings, because I know I have a friend that has always recommended books to me, and after I've read them, it's like, where has this been all my life? Thank you so much for introducing me to it.
Yeah, like I forgot that I had given my mother some of my Discworld books. And I was telling her yesterday that they've, approved a TV show based on this story arc in the series. And I forgot. And she was like, oh, well, that should be interesting. Those characters are really... I was like, wait, what? How do you... Oh, yeah. I gave those to you. That was interesting. That's, and it's nice now to see some of the books I've loved for years being made into really cool adaptations, like Good Omens. Oh my God, that was so good. It's the only book I've ever given my dad where I've seen him laugh out loud on public transit. Like, I gave it to him one time when he came up to visit me in New York, and we were taking the train in, and he was cracking up. And it's New York, so no one looks at you twice if you're laughing loudly in public. We just figure, yeah, it's another person that came to New York and they're weird, and that's fine because that's what New York's made of.
Yep.
But the books, it really helps because it creates the arts in general, and I have a tendency to say the arts when I mean almost, all facets of it. Music, writing, visual arts, and video games, because they are a form of art. And anybody who thinks they're not can fight me. They're all designed with the same kind of purpose, which I've said before. And like, my job as a performer when I'm performing is, I like to say, I'm in the business of joy and forgetting. You're in the business of giving people joy and helping them forget, even for a little while, their problems that they came in with. And I think that's what all these things do for us, especially growing up, and especially if you felt really alone. It's easier to be alone when you've got all these different worlds you can go to, Oh,
that is 100% accurate right there. Now, you mentioned this Discworld.
Oh, yes.
I am not familiar with it, and it's one of the things that this podcast has allowed me to do is get educated so much on so many things that I'm not familiar with. So, what is Discworld, and why should I read it?
Well, you should read it because it's arguably one of the best series I've ever read. The issue is, I think it's about 36 or 37 books long, but they're broken up into character story arcs, so it's a little easier. So Discworld is from the mind of a brilliant man named Terry Pratchett, who also co-wrote Good Omens with Neil Gaiman. I hadn't actually read Discworld until I met my husband, and he's like, you know what, I think you'd really like this series, because he's looking at my shelf, and it's full of Neil Gaiman, it's full of R.A. Salvatore. He says, you should really try Terry Pratchett. And it is what he does. There's a lot of satire involved. He makes fun of a lot of the fantasy tropes. It might be a little easier to start Discworld if you have some knowledge of fantasy tropes, goblins, orcs, vampires, werewolves, if you have a little bit of knowledge of that. But anybody can really start it because he does a great job explaining it. But it's really, the Discworld is a parallel for our world. And Terry used the Discworld to point out actual things and issues and problems here, but through the lens of fantasy. And it can be really important to do that because some people might not be willing to tackle a subject if it's brought on, head first at them. But if you kind of put them off their guard a bit, the message sinks in. And it's I say the same thing about George Carlin. George Carlin was brilliant with that. He would set you up laughing with all the jokes and then hit you with a very big truth. And you're already put off guard because you're laughing, so it has a minute to sink in. Mm-hmm. So what Terry did was, I talk like I know him. You feel like you know these authors, though. You feel like you know them through their writing.
Exactly.
And what he's done is created these multi-layered, very human. When I say human, I don't necessarily mean species, but very flawed and wonderful characters, all set on this absurd world that is flat and being carried through space on the back of 4 elephants, which are riding a giant turtle. The turtle's name is Great Atuin, by the way, in case you needed to know how much of a nerd I am. And so he's created all of these different characters in these books that speak to speak to the reader. You know, my personal favorite is Sam Vimes, who is the head of the City Watch. And it's a man that knows how awful a person he could be if he let himself. So he absolutely strives to not let that happen. And that's it's a lesson that I think hits a lot of people. And they get up to all these shenanigans. And of course, I love police procedurals anyway. So this is, the cops. But it's basically this. If you love fantasy, just your standard fantasy, if you love satire, and if you love what turns out to be really deep philosophy, you need to read Discworld. And once you've picked it up, you're not going to be able to stop. Because you want to know what happens to these characters. And you become emotionally invested in them very deeply. Part of me is very sad knowing that I'm never going to get another book. Because Terry Pratchett died, he had Alzheimer's, and he died a couple years ago. But, it's in good hands. The stories are going to be told on film. There's some really great Audible. Like, here's the thing. If you travel a lot, you can get on Audible and, the stories will be read to you. And they've got really great people reading them and everything. But Discworld, you'll see me post it a lot, quotes from Discworld. And they all have a meaning that I think will touch universal themes. And that's what all the really great books do. They have something that will touch people that are so different from each other, but each of them is going to get that message and it's going to mean something to them. It is for me anyway. I don't know if I'm describing it well, but I think everyone should give it a try. My personal favorites are the Night Watch series and Death, because Death is one of the best characters ever written.
With Discworld, do you have to start with book one, or
you don't have to? There's somebody went through and made reading guides, which is helpful. And if you have some knowledge of fantasy worlds already, you can really start anywhere as long as you start at the beginning of one of the arcs.
Okay.
So if you're starting the Witches series, you're going to start at Weird Sisters, which is basically Macbeth. Hilariously Macbeth. You can start in the beginning. The beginning is a character named Rincewind, who's a wizard, a very failed wizard. For the Night Watch series, you're going to start with Guards. For Death, Death kind of goes, he has a lot of one-shots. So you can start at Mort, you can start with Reaper Man or Hogfather, but all of them are going to make you laugh and most likely make you cry. And I don't really cry easy, but there's a lot of poignancy in these books because it speaks to, like I said, the human condition. And one of the really famous bits from Hogfather is when somebody's saying, oh, are you saying that humans need fantasy to just escape the world? And Death replies, no, humans need fantasy to be human. And it's true. I think it's really true. Because without it, life gets awfully boring. And that's another Death quote. In a universe so full of wonders, humans have managed to invent boredom.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Well, humans have definitely invented some things where it's why did we do this?
This is a bad idea looking back on it. But I usually, I'll post Discworld quotes all the time, especially I have a quotation exchange ongoing hashtag with B. Dave Walters. So, if you just search hashtag quotation exchange, you're going to get a lot of our back and forth, a good chunk of which is Discworld. Because when you've got 36 books of awesomeness, you've got a lot of quotes to choose from.
Oh, totally. And that's one of the things where, when you said how many books there are, it's just one of those things of I can dedicate the next year just to reading those books and, work my way through that series and that world. And
it's amazing. And there's character arcs, and then there's one shots, characters that never show up again, but they're usually meant, the one shots address certain themes. There's one called Moving Pictures, which is about film, like their version of what movies turn out to be. There's one called The Truth, which is about journalism and how, a lie can run around the world before the truth has its boots on.
Mm-hmm.
And then those one-shot characters will show up, here and there they're just not part of the huge overarching theme. But I mean, I read a Discworld book still, and I've read them all over and over and over, but I'll still pick them up and read one once a month, twice a month. Because every time you read it, there's something new you find.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a new way of looking at it, because me 20 years ago isn't going to be reading something about anger and frustration and feeling like you haven't done in your life what you wanted the way me now is.
Absolutely.
Me now is going, oh my God, this is really hitting way too close to home. Me 20 years ago thinks, oh, well, this is just a good character. So if you pick up a book and you reread it, I think you'd be amazed how different it can be years apart. And I think that's what gives Discworld so much rereadability to me, is that every time I read it, it affects me differently.
Well, now you're just making me want to load up the Orange County Library system and request some books.
I'm telling you, if you really start, I'm biased, I know, but start with Guards. It's amazing. And it's also why Guards from Terry Pratchett is why every time someone asks me for a secret password, I say swordfish. And once you read it, you'll get the joke. But no, that is not my password for anything. Please don't try it. The joke is, that every secret society, the password is swordfish. He uses it a couple times, but a lot of it is very applicable to things. It's applicable to things we've seen through our whole lives. But I think especially now, and not getting political or anything, because that's not what this is about. But you see things a little bit differently in the light of today's world than you do, again, when you're younger. I think the more life experience you have, and the more you look around and say, we have really not done a great job here. It kind of brings things a little closer to home.
Totally understand. And I'll just leave it at yes. I agree. 500%, 1,000%.
Oh, there we go. I found the quote I meant to talk. I was trying to remember it. I couldn't remember it. Yay.
Huzzah.
Yeah. And it's a dragon is saying it to a person. I'm not going to give away everything, but a dragon is saying it. And it says, "We were dragons. We're supposed to be cruel, cunning, heartless, and terrible. But this I can tell you, we never burned and tortured and ripped one another apart and called it morality." And that to me kind of sums up the reason to read Discworld, is you're taking this fun, what you think is just going to be a fun little fantasy walk, and then they hit you with something like that. And it's pretty fantastic. And I honestly, I could talk about Discworld for hours, so you probably don't want to keep me going. Just read Terry Pratchett and read about him. When he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, he became a great advocate for, basically the right to end, your life when life got when you were diagnosed, something like that. And he did a whole documentary, and the way he speaks about things, just he's amazing. And I would say read up on him. He's fantastic. You can cut that if you want.
I think I'll leave it, just because I think people do need to get some knowledge in their brains from time to time.
Yeah, it's that think about the authors when you're reading a book. That's the other thing. Oh, I'm just like knocking my computer all over the place. But think about the authors when you're reading a book, because the authors aren't just this disembodied thing. The authors are humans and people with feelings and opinions, and it all informs their work. So, learn about your authors. Learn about artists and realize that, again, all artists are people who have the right to an opinion. That's another one of my soapboxes, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. You're allowed as many soapboxes as you want.
I have so many, and yet I hate cleaning. Like, you'd think somebody that has this many soapboxes would have the most sparkling clean house right now, but in reality, I had to clear a space on my floor to sit down so I could record this.
Oh.
And I don't even have the excuse of having children.
Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to mention kids and cleaning. I
just have a cat and a dog and a husband.
I'm just going to shake my head that no one can see while I think about the upstairs and what it looked like a couple days ago and cleaning.
Yeah. Oh, please. When I was a kid, when we were in Germany, I had an obsession with Legos, man. And you find a Lego on the carpet at night that you missed when you were cleaning up your Legos, but you always find it with your foot. I'm telling you.
Yes, you do.
It's like a D4. You don't want to do that either.
That is also true, which leads us and you have been mastering the segues here.
I am a professional.
Professional seguer. Is that one of the things that you're known for on in the Twitters is the tabletop gaming community.
Yes.
And you are a role player.
I am, and it's funny because I really did fall into it probably just face first, because I'd never really done it until March of last year.
Wow.
Yeah, I had played D&D games with my husband and our close friends, but not often, because my very first D&D experience, that's the Paladin story. And why I don't really play Paladin very much. I'm telling you, they were bandits. Okay, and they deserve to be killed, and I was totally going to sell all that loot to benefit the church. But anyway, and since I was 3.5, my husband was like, "You are now fallen." But it wasn't until March of last year that I finally agreed to do a stream, and I'm still a little flabbergasted at how it all just kind of picked up steam and started rolling. In the opera world, a lot of people, they think of opera as this very hoity-toity high-class thing, and I hate to burst your bubble, but it's not. And there's a lot of nerdy opera singers, but I guess I was kind of afraid to let those two mix. And then last year, my agent was like, "No, go ahead. Let your geek flag fly." And I was like, "Okay." And that's when all this started happening. And so since I've done a lot of streams with some great people, and I still do. I do occasional stuff. I have a campaign that's probably going to be going on hiatus just for a bit, because I have a gig that's going to be for a month. But yeah, it's fun. I was so afraid of making an idiot of myself on stream playing Dungeons and Dragons, but then I found out people love it when you make an idiot of yourself on stream when you play Dungeons and Dragons.
I think, with the advent of streaming and watching, is that the one thing for me, because I just with time and scheduling and kids and family and everything, I don't get the chance to have a sit down game or whatnot, but I get to experience watching a game.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing. And it's not just like Dungeons and Dragons, it's every kind of game. If there's a game that I'm interested in and maybe I have the book at the house and I haven't been able to play it, I can find somebody streaming it and just get invested in their characters and their story. And it's not the same, but I will definitely sit down and enjoy it and get, super appreciative of what they are doing.
Yeah, and what's funny is I had never listened to a podcast of any kind until January of 2018. And I was going down for a gig for a month, and I think I told this story on Dragon Talk, I can't remember. My husband was like, "Okay, you're going to have a lot of downtime, like traveling and stuff. You should listen to this podcast. It's a bunch of voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons." And so for the first 6 months that I listened to Critical Role, 5 or 6 months, I never watched the videos. For the first 3 months, I didn't even know what they looked like. I just listened to their story. And I think that's what's so great about the role-playing streams, especially when they go to podcasts. If you can't watch it, you can still listen. And you're still getting the story, and you're still getting the description. And it's like old radio plays. It's great.
It is. And it's one of those things where I do look at like Critical Role and I'm like, man, if I had the time, because it's the same way like when I have people come on and talk about a TV show called Supernatural.
Supernatural.
It's like, okay, there's 15 seasons by 24 episodes and they're each 45 minutes. Just dedicating that much time to one show, I'd be missing out on like 7 other shows. But it's the same way.
I went to high school with one of those guys.
What?
Yeah, the first 2 years I was at my one high school, and Jared Padalecki was in my class.
That's so cool.
My brother was friends with his brother. Yeah. And it's a really fun show, by the way, Supernatural. I haven't watched the later seasons, but I watched some of the beginning seasons, and it's dorky and fun, and I absolutely love it. And the actors, if you follow them on social media, they're all really great people, which is always nice when you find out that the people you enjoy watching are also nice people.
I've had the opposite happen where it's like, oh, I'm following this actor who I really loved, and let me unfollow.
That's Twitter for you. You're gonna find out. When I go on some of those soapboxes, it's kind of fun. I'll tweet and then I just kind of sit and watch the follower count drop. I'm like, it's okay. A lot of times it ends up evening out, but I mean, that's, you're curating your list, your experiences to what you want to follow, and that's the right to do so. But I gave my mom my stream from the Greyhawk channel, and I said, "Mom, listen to this. I'm always talking about Dungeons and Dragons to you." My poor mother, she's like, she is the guinea pig for everything. And by the way, my mom used to sit, because my dad at the point when I was in high school, my dad was out of the military and he was an organ donation coordinator. So he was out at all hours with donors. And if he was out, my mom would come. I had one of those really awesome bunk things where the bottom one was a futon and the top one was like your bed. Mm-hmm. And that was like really popular in the 90s. And so she would come in and sit on the futon and fall asleep watching me play Final Fantasy VII. And that woman loves chocobo racing. Like, I can't even tell you. Her ringtone is still ba-ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da on my phone, because she loved watching me play the games. She didn't always understand them, but she loved watching me and she loved listening to the games. So I give her my my Greyhawk channel stream, and I'm like, "Mom, just listen, see if you can kind of get into it." And the texts I would get back as she listened were amazing. And she's like, "Is this all Dungeons and Dragons is? You just talk?" I'm like, "Yes, we talk a lot." And then she's like, "I'm 2 episodes in and there's no dungeons or even a dragon." I was like, Mom, there's very few dungeons, even few darks. Then she gets to another episode and goes, "You're in a dungeon, and I bet you a dragon could get you out of here." I'm like, okay, you're cut off. You're not watching. You're not watching anymore. And not only that, I started to realize the sheer amount of dirty jokes I make playing as a bard, and I'm like, I don't want my mom watching. It's like every time she tries to she's like, "Oh, you're streaming that Witcher game. I'm gonna come watch you." I'm like, please don't. I make way too many dirty jokes. I feel, knowing me, my mom would like pop in like in one of the sex scenes, and she would be like, "What are you doing?" I tend to skip over those on stream. I like every time one of them starts, I'm like, click, okay, yay, it's over.
Oh my goodness!
And the Witcher, if you've ever played The Witcher, you know that's a lot of skipping. Geralt likes to get around. He do. But yeah, Critical Role was the first like streamed game that D&D game. And that's the one that, I sat there and I listened, and Shane from the Greyhawk channel had already talked to me about being on a stream. I was like, I can't do that. I'm going to mess up the rules. I'm going to mess up something I say. Nobody's going to want to watch it, blah, blah. And then I'm listening to Critical Role and I'm like, they make mistakes. They don't always remember the rules. They sometimes do something that gets the party in major trouble. Maybe I can do this. Maybe it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lesson I'm still working on in my everyday life. You don't have to be perfect for everybody to like you. But yeah, that's when I started. And then I started Greyhawk channel. It was supposed to be a one-shot that turned into a two-shot that turned into a whole campaign. And then Grant had me on his game, and I got to kill Matt, and I think that's where it really started to snowball and got out of control. A little out of control. Yeah. A little crazy that, now I've been on a panel at PAX East, and looking back, I'm just like, what the hell happened?
So for your gaming experience, is there a particular do you tend to stay towards lean towards Dungeons and Dragons? Do you expand outwards to some of the other game systems?
I've played a few. I've played a few. The Cypher, I got to play the Cypher system. Then I got to do the very first ever streamed Invisible Sun game, which is also Monty Cook Gaming. I got to play The Witcher tabletop, which was really fun. And I've got all these other things. There's just one, this huge honking game system that our friend bought called Gloomhaven.
Okay, yeah.
And we're really trying to get into that. But my God, the box alone weighs like 25 pounds.
Yes, it does.
And then we had everything set up, and my dog decided to be Godzilla and just went through the... Yeah. I haven't done I'm sure there's other systems, that I'd love to play that I don't know about. I don't pretend to be any kind of expert on any of these systems. I'm not. I mean, I made a ranger and named my snake Danger Noodle. That's how serious, also I was a terrible ranger. I was a terrible ranger and I was a terrible sorcerer. Just the mechanics wise.
Mm-hmm.
The paladin still takes the cake for the role-playing fail. I mean, I guess I play a lot of 5e just because that's what's prevalent on streams.
Right.
But Invisible Sun was really interesting because you got to kind of craft your own narrative, and you could kind of tailor things a little bit more than you can in 5e. But I'm also not one of those people, and I know there's a lot of people out there that like to trash talk one game system over another, whatever else. I'm not going to be that kind of person because every game system is going to have its failings. Every game system's going to do something better than another one. You know, I don't think anybody should be monolithic in what they play. Everybody should expand.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where, and as the big one in the room, like Dungeons and Dragons is generally that first taste of tabletop gaming for a lot of people.
Well, now Stranger Things is really bringing it out into...
Oh, absolutely.
People, I mean, not just Stranger Things, but, the Critical Role gang has done a lot to bring it towards more people. And they take a lot of crap. And I'm not going to get as vehement as I have online about it, but don't hate on other people for being successful. Just don't do it. And don't act like if someone's successful or if they're a girl or a female or LGBT or anything, don't act like they don't have a place in your game.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do. Just don't. Don't be that gatekeeping jerk. And for God's sakes, here's the other thing on streams. Please don't tell players how to play their characters. If you're in Twitch chat or something, please don't start rule quoting and rules lawyering in the chat or telling people, well, that was a stupid decision, you should do this. Just don't do it, please. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's happened on multiple streams, and I'm just like, please stop.
It is okay. I was just looking at my shelf here when we were talking about the multiple game systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like I probably have like 25 or 30 different game systems that I'm looking at, and each one there's great things about it, and there is
Mm-hmm.
things that I don't like about it, but I enjoy them. That's why I have them, and that's why I keep them. And and going back to what you said about like I look at the people around me in just different circles, and it's like I'm over the moon ecstatic, happy for the people that are getting to do what they are so passionate about doing. And it's like I'm doing my thing. Like I don't there's nothing that I would rather do than be happy for the people that I've met and the friends that I've made, and see that their success and their continued successes in what they want to do.
Exactly. And you can have this thing that I like to call being happily envious. You're thrilled for your friends. And it happens a lot in the opera world for me too, because there's a lot of competition in the opera world, and I can be happy as hell for some of my friends that are getting roles that I had hoped for. I can be happy for them while also being, like, oh, I wish I had that.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't change the fact that I'm happy for them.
Exactly.
Be happy that a hobby that you love, more people are coming in and loving it too. Don't huddle down and just be angry. It's not about being angry. Look at back to us when we were kids and we were alone and we were hiding from bullies to eat our lunch. You don't want that for other people. Don't you wish somebody back then had stretched out a hand and said, "Here, come be with us"? Don't try to ostracize other people.
Yep, that's the thing that that's a conversation that we have with our kids on a daily basis, especially because my growing up, the way that my wife grew up, our interactions through middle school and high school, what we are into, especially they're getting into Dungeons and Dragons now. And I know that they're going to school talking about it, and it could generate some different conversations with their friends or their peers. And it's like, you know what? You just tell them how fun it is, and if they want to say something, then they're going to say it, but just know that you are having fun and you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. The general rule is if somebody enjoys something and it's not hurting you, don't bother them about it. It's not somebody else playing tabletop games differently than you do doesn't change the fact that you can also enjoy it the way you do. It's just
It's just grrr.
Incidentally, there is a Discworld tabletop setting, and I have not gotten to play it yet, Universe. Just letting you know, anybody who's listening to this, I have not gotten to play the Discworld tabletop setting. I really need to. But yeah, it's just one of those things that people need to learn, that you can be slightly envious of someone's success without being hateful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really important lesson to learn. And you also don't see 9 times out of 10 the days, weeks, months, years of work that goes into that success. It's not overnight.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, there are people now that I've recorded with or talked with like years ago, and it's just seeing what they're doing now, and I'm just like, I don't know how you do it. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, I don't know how many hours in the day that you're doing this, but you're doing something and you're doing it right. And like, I'm so happy that people are seeing your work.
Yeah, and remember too that everybody is balancing so many plates at any given time. Like, there's a lot of people that message me that get this idea that I'm a full-time performer. I'm not. I have to have a day job. In this case, I have to have 2 part-time jobs because I lost my job in April. I have 2 part-time jobs. I am trying to, I am, but also it's a constant trying to sing opera professionally. This fun and happy new foray into like gaming as an actual thing that people want to watch and stuff. That's another thing, so keep in mind that there's a lot of work goes into things that people don't even know, and a lot of, struggle. And I think people need to remember that a little bit.
Now, speaking of opera, mentioned at the top of the podcast is that you, along with Hannah Rose, created a Bard subclass called College of the Opera.
We did.
How did that come about?
Because I made a silly tweet. And Hannah was like, "We can actually do that, And I was like, "What?" My tweet was basically, me personally, I don't play any instruments. I can play piano enough to learn my part, but I can't play piano. I sing. And in kind of a parallel between D&D and real life, the voice is not counted as an instrument in the D&D handbook. And in real life, a lot of times, there's singers are considered separate from musicians, which is a whole nother ball of wax, which isn't right. But I was like, well, it's not fair that a bard can't just choose the voice as their instrument, And, where's my opera college with, my extra languages and my shattering? And so Hannah writes me and she goes, we could actually do that. I was like, are you serious? Yeah, we can do that. So then when we met up at PAX Unplugged last year, we talked about it a little bit more, and we worked out the stuff in Twitter DMs, and chats, and she's a brilliant writer. Like, I would never have been able to do it myself. And she understands rule sets and, crafting things with the proper amount of I don't want to say difficulty, but you know what I mean? Like ramping up abilities with levels and stuff like that. And we both, she was originally just going to release it as for pay as you want. And I was like, no, there's work that's gone into this. It's worth something. So I think we put it up for $1.99, which we got complaints about. People complained, but we put up on the DMs Guild, I think 3 or 4 days before Christmas. And we were platinum by mid-January. It was insane. A bunch of websites picked it up. I guess the joke of an opera singer helping write an opera bard class was just too good for people to pass up. Consistently in the articles, you see things like, she's an opera singer, but she plays D&D. I'm like, this is not mutually exclusive. I run a group on Facebook that's got like 500 opera singing D&D players. There's tons of us because we were all nerds. But it kind of exploded. And I've gotten to play it a couple times. I got to play it on North by Northwest, in which I accidentally exploded a little baby griffin. And I feel really bad because I used my shatter ability, but I crit. And he exploded. And I felt so bad. Like, I was like, oh no, take that out. And he was like, nope, that stays in. And then I got to play it again on the Jasper's Game Day charity stream. And what's been really great for Hannah and I is just getting all the messages from all the people having a great time doing it. And what I sincerely hope, and has happened on a few occasions because people have written me, is that people go and actually listen to opera and get rid of this idea that it's something that isn't for most people. And suddenly I'm getting messages from people that are going, oh my God, opera's funny. I'm like, yes, it is. Now, opera's really pretty. Yes, it is. You know? And I think it's hilarious that a silly tweet led to this insanely crazy explosion of things, to the point where there were major US opera companies sharing on their social media about a D&D subclass. I think that's amazing. Like, when you have Fort Worth Opera and San Francisco Opera sharing stuff about D&D, this is the best thing. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
That is, I that is something where you look at some of the stuff that's, people post on Twitter, and just to see something like that, like, take off. And I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that there. I think the one thing that I'm really enjoying is that with the advent of the DMs Guild, you can find so many different new things, like things that you wouldn't ever consider, and to have your character geared a certain way, or like, and I had no clue that voice wasn't an instrument.
It is not.
But,
and I will correct myself, it is San Diego Opera that tweeted it. I don't know, maybe San Fran did too, but San Diego Opera is the one that tweeted it. And it was kind of funny too, because the cover picture of the College of the Opera on DMs Guild, for people that don't know, is actually, it's me from Queen of the Night at St. Pete. So it's from an opera performance on the cover of the opera thing, and I just think that's funny. But yeah, it's the DMs Guild is a great place to see a lot of new content. I wish people would value their work a little bit more. There's this big, you've probably seen it recently with the whole paid DM thing that's going around.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, like I said, there's people that was like, well, I don't really think that this is worth $1.99. And, Hannah laid out how many hours of work had gone into it. And they're like, yes, but we should treat this like something we love. And if you love it, you shouldn't charge for it. And that's bullshit. Sorry, I said a bad word.
It is okay, because the expression I made over here was probably equivalent to bullshit.
Yeah. And we get that, a lot of artists and performers get that a lot. If you love it, if it's something you love to do, well, you shouldn't charge for it. I have bills. We all have bills, and creators need to pay those bills, and they don't get paid in exposure bucks or goodwill. They get paid in real money. And $1.99 for something off the DMs Guild that you can reuse as many times as you want, pretty good bargain, and you can see that all over the DMs Guild. There's some amazing work out there, guys. And just support the creators. If you can't afford to buy one of their creations, share the heck out of it, you know? But don't go to a creator ever and tell them that their work is not worth getting paid for. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. I mean, you wouldn't ask a plumber to come fix your house for free. I mean, you might, but in that case, you're just going to end up on like the choosing beggar subreddit, you know? Seriously.
It just boggles my mind, but I mean, a lot of things blows me away nowadays.
And I think, and by the way, just to shout out Hannah Rose a little bit more, she is now editing for Wizards of the Coast, which I just think is amazing. She did work on their new Avernus thing, which she kept secret from me for months, and I didn't find out until after D&D Live, and I was like, how could you keep this a secret? And she's like, NDAs. She's a wonderful writer, and she might still be doing it, so I'm just going to shout it out a little bit, even if this airs later. She's doing a thing right now where she is I'm not going to say this word right, anonymized, not anonymized, that's like an anemone, an anonymized receipt of a donation to races. She is writing you a custom magic item for a D&D. And she also does that for my Patreon. My $10 and up tier gets a custom Hannah Rose item every month. And she never fails to uplift her fellow creators. She never fails to be a positive force in the community. And I feel really lucky that I got to work with her before she got famous. She's wonderful. But yeah, it's I think it's a fun class. If you like playing Bard, check it out. You get to do all sorts. I don't want to give too much away, but you get to do all sorts of crazy things. And it focuses on crowd control, which is something that a lot of classes don't.
Well, that is awesome. And I'll have to definitely check it out. I've purchased a few things from the DMs Guild, but as a person who doesn't get to play much of anything besides playing with the kids, I don't have a lot of use for DMs Guild stuff, but I like to support people. So
yeah. I mean, like I said, even if you can't use it, like, you just share it. When you share something, it means a lot to any creator that somebody even took the time to say, hey, this looks really cool. You should go check it out.
That is what I sometimes get worried about when I'm on the Twitter is, man, I retweet a lot of stuff. And then when I see cool things, especially like when I see people's artwork, even if it's just a quick tweet saying, I really like your art. And I try to make sure I do that because I want, the people to know, hey, over here, this one person over here, I like your stuff.
I can tell you from experience that sometimes that single message can make or break a day. It can really, like, anybody that follows my Twitter knows that I've been trying to be a little bit more open about how difficult some of the struggles can be with anxiety and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And getting a tweet from somebody on music, or in this case, art for you, it can really make your day feel better and say, oh, I made one person's day nicer. If you can make that a personal goal to go out and try to make at least one person's day better every day, I guarantee you your day is going to be better. So I think you should keep doing that. Keep telling the artist that you love it. Because you never know if they're at a place where they're like, nobody likes this, or I should just quit. And sometimes a message saying, I really think your artwork is nice, can change that. So I think you're doing good work just by tweeting about art. And there are a lot of really flippin' talented artists on Twitter. My God. The art, the fantasy artwork and the character artwork I see on my feed every day, I'm just like, holy crap.
Yeah, it is mind-bogglingly amazing. And I'm like, dang, it's so good.
I know. And I'm like, I need all the money
Yes.
in the world so I can start commissioning pictures. I need all the money in the world. Because, you don't, if you want, again, we're going back to the pay, don't ever ask somebody to draw you something for free either. Or you'll get my version of a drawing, which is a stick figure.
Yeah.
I can't draw for crap. But yeah, it's there's some amazing people in this fandom. There are some amazing people, and there's amazingly talented artists. And I think all of us should feel rather privileged to be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for a group of people that I remember, and I told the story on a podcast previously, where it's like hiding in the corner of a lunchroom, or even in our college when we would play D&D out in the student union, we would be like in a corner and we'd still get the looks and stuff. And now to have like this community in the way it is, and to have like so many positive people in it, and have it be accepted and like and I hate to like air quote like normal, but like it just feels like there's so many people that it's just a normal thing now. Like D&D is out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was wearing a D&D shirt or something at a restaurant, and somebody goes, "Hey, have you heard of this guy named Matthew Mercer?" Yep. Do you like that show? Oh, I never played D&D, but I'm listening to this show and now I want to play D&D. I'm like, this is the hopeful reaction. Yes. Yep. It is normal. It's fun. And more importantly, playing D&D and playing role-playing games can teach you how to be empathetic, because you are being made to put yourself in someone else's shoes and experience life as someone else. And I think it's a lesson that can be transferred to the quote unquote real life, where you can look at something and instead of immediately saying, oh, that person is insert whatever, think why, and put yourself in that person's shoes. And I know that there's a lot of schools that are using D&D for that reason, to help foster relationships and empathy, and teach people how to work together, which if they've ever been in any D&D party, that's going to go south real quick. I mean, that's going to go south. I have yet to be in a D&D party where everybody's like, this is a plan. We're going to stick to it. This is a plan. Oh, what's that shiny thing? It's more like what's going to happen. But yeah, I think it's nice to see that through social media, a lot of us found each other. We kind of gravitated and are starting to form, a really good community. And I think it's just going to keep growing from here, honestly.
Absolutely. Now, for the people that have made it to the end of this podcast and they would like to go find you on the internet, what are the best places to do so?
You can find me on the Twitters at the Opera Geek, which is, the Twitter has links to all of my websites, like my personal site and my singing work and everything else. I'm on Twitch as the Opera Geek, and in fact tonight, well, I'm probably not tonight when this airs, but Wednesday nights I do tend to stream, so I'm working my way through the Death March of Witcher right now. You can catch up on the past broadcasts, some of which include the actual voice actor of Geralt of Rivia hanging out and like basically MST3K'ing me while I play Witcher, which is really fun. So you can find me at the Opera Geek on Twitch as well. But yeah, if you head to either my Twitter or kellibutler.com, there is links to everything there. And I would love to see more people join my hedgehog army. That is my hedgehogs.
And I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes and on the website, as well as a link to the subclass that is on the DM's Guild that was co-created by you and Hannah Rose. So that way people can go pick it up and play some good College of Bards. in current D&D games. And yeah, and I hope people follow on Twitter and Twitch and give you some likes and
Yay!
everything else, and check out Opera, because Opera
give me internet validation. And yes, check out Opera. It's great.
But Kelli, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to me. And I will definitely, after I read some Discworld, be sending you some messages about what I think about it.
Yes, and I'm telling you, start with guards.
I wrote it down in my show notes to go ahead and get it from the library, or at least request it. So
yay! You're going to have such fun in my black hole of Discworld. It just sucks you in. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.